Welcome, everyone. Dean Cottrill here from T360. I've got Lisa Piccardo.
And
right?
we're together in the
Yes.
same room,
Yeah,
which
this
is
is
not unusual, which is unusual. We're usually in different parts of the country on Zoom.
That's right.
So we're at the leading RE conference at the Wynn in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, baby. And this is not a virtual background. This is actually a real background, too. We've had that question already by our trusty Chris Riley. He's running the back scenes here to make this thing come together. So with people coming in, we're excited. This is a great topic.
Yeah.
It's one that actually a lot of people are very interested in hearing about the new models and what's going on. And also, competitive assessment's not too sexy, though.
No, but it's been a hot topic. Even just here, as we're meeting with leaders from independent companies, they're challenged. They're sort of like, it's struggle to recruit. So hopefully this is going to help, and you're gonna have some good takeaways.
Yeah, and this is we'll dive right in. I don't want to get too far off, but this is one thing that a lot of the exercises that we do with organizations are something that we encourage that you do on a repetitive basis, like an annual basis, for example. And this is one of them, is the competitive assessment, making sure you have a good sense of the landscape you're competing in, and because nothing stays the same.
Right.
Everything's changing. So let's jump in. We'll go ahead and jump into the keynote. We'll go through this. If you have any questions, you can throw it in the chat.
Let me just share my screen. Bear with me.
All right.
Okay, awesome.
Here we go.
So one of the things you all know that we do the T3 Trends report every year, and they always do a data chapter, right, about what's happening in the industry. So Dean, why don't you speak to this a little bit?
Yeah, so what you see here is the top. We do the Mega 1000, the top 1,000 brokerages, agent count, volume, sales units. And as you see here, this is the top 20. And a couple of points that are on the right there, the newer companies, the newer models per se, half of the top 20 are new. It came in the last 23 years, basically. I know we're in 2024, but we don't have 2024 numbers yet. So we're looking at 2023.
Let me just do a little plug for that. Right now we're collecting March 5th is the deadline. So if you've not submitted your numbers for the Mega 1000, please do so. And Chris will put a link in the chat for that as well.
Yeah. And just on the plug, if you're over 350 million roughly, that's roughly where the 1,000 is, give or take. It moves up and down, but that's where it is. So you send in your information to us. But that said, let's talk a little bit about there's numbers tell stories, I always say, and success leaves clues. So when you look here and you see those top, you see Compass, who knocked off Anywhere Advisors, who used to be NRT. That was Realogy's company-owned store. Now it's Anywhere Advisors. That's a company-owned stores. And that was a couple years ago now. It's like 3-4 years ago, and stays at number one. But one thing that really highlights for me here is, the new models, as we said, half of these are something that's come in the last since 23 years, roughly. Some of these actually, like EXP, the number 4 there, was originated, in 2009, October 2009. So 15 years. And was able to run. And one thing that stands out to me is that a lot of organizations, frankly, if you look back, and we have and Jack Miller, our CEO, president, does a really great presentation talking about like the last
50 years.
It's 50 years, and shows, what's happened in each of the decades and what's been happening and what's going on. And a lot of real estate operations organizations, for them to get in the top 10, top 20, it took decades. It took a long time, a long runway. And frankly, over the last 20 years, a lot of this has been due because of private equity and also, financial backing. A lot of organizations, frankly, now, again, half of 50% of these have come out of nowhere in the last 20 some years, and really not nowhere, but really jumped up. And
like to look at EXP in the top 4, I think you said the top, it used to be just 2 that were over 100 million, right? Now we have 4, and look at the drop off to 5 then, right?
Talk about, like, they used to be titans. We used to call Home Services of America and NRT, now Anywhere Advisors. They were the Goliaths in this Mega 1000, the Mega 10, 20, whatever the number might have been. And the difference between Anywhere and Home Services was like huge. It's like what you see between 4 and 5, going from 160, roughly 159 billion to 42 billion, right? And that drop off. And then, as you can see, EXP and Compass flew right up into that top 4. Now you have 4 really Goliaths up the top there. And then and 42 billion is nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
Those are some real numbers right there.
Yeah, you see a couple other big companies on here, Peerage and and Majestic, which we're going to focus on some more non-traditional models, but both of them was through acquisitions, right? Yep. I mean, they own a bunch of different companies. Peerage does brands, and Majestic is, I think, 8 Sotheby's Realty companies, so they're on the list. But if you look on the right, the biggest mover was the real brokerage, which leaped from 76 last year to 18 in 2023, and I'm guessing higher at this stage. We're going to talk a little bit about them. Yep. Also, fee-based growth, United and Fathom both rose up, and so they're growing. And these have been fascinating to me. I come from a traditional brokerage and one brand. I spent much of my real estate career. So the last 2 years watching the growth of these companies has been very fascinating. Yeah,
and also one of the things that Lisa and I are really blessed with is we have the opportunity to see all the models. And we've compartmentalized. We're going to talk about that into 4 key areas when we're talking about different models, but we get to see under the hood too of operations and efficiencies and effectiveness and profitability, things like that. And there's a lot to be said in every model, and every model in every lane can be extremely successful in that. So let's go ahead and we'll move on here and kind of highlight these 4 models. So when you look at this graph here on the right, you see the top right, traditional. And then as you move around counterclockwise, business generation, that's something we're looking at more like teamerages that we see. We call them teamerages, where you have a team-based lead gen, kind of a team that's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And frankly, some of these teamerages are huge. Huge. Yeah, doing over $1 billion in business and have a couple hundred agents. Mark
Spain Real Estate, Jason Mitchell Group. We work with a lot of teamerages as well.
Yep. George Lott's group just talked. Yep. George and others. I mean, there's just a lot of people. Gary Ashton, for example, other ones. Those are kind of the teamerages kind of models. And then you go to fee-based, all right? And that's something we're going to show you growth. We're going to show you how these different models, how they, if you put all those different 20 companies in the top mega 100, top 100 and the 1000, how they're shifting, who's capturing more market share. And then we had the CAP model, really came on real strong with Keller Williams. That's who really came out of the gates with the CAP model and blew it up and took it across the country.
And now we've got EXP and Real and LPT, which we're going to talk about. So just a plug for the Trends Report. This is chapter 2 in the Trends Report this year.
Yeah, and if you don't, t3trends.com, if you're not someone who gets the Trends Report every year, just a real quick snippet on that. We spent about 1,000 hours deep diving into specific areas that we feel are the biggest trends affecting our business. And that's something that a lot of organizations find a lot of value in reading and seeing what's happening.
I met somebody last night who talked to somebody else. She goes, "You don't read that? I just can't wait to get it." And, we share it around the office and we talk about it at sales meetings. Yep. She loves it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is the graph here. Lisa, I'll let you take a little bit of this. But see here, these are the 4 categories. You at the bottom, you start on the left, you have the biz gen, fee-based, capped, and traditional. And you can see the changes. And this is really
the top 100.
Top 100
we're looking at. Yeah. So traditional lost 17 firms, mostly through acquisitions, as we mentioned, some of those companies, Peerage and Majestic and some of the other companies. Capped is EXP and Real. And then KW, I think, is the only non-KW capped firm. Most of them are KW in the capped model, right? That went up or down, right? Fee-based, Fathom and United were unranked in 2018, and now they're in the top 20, right? And then business generation, we've mentioned Mark Spain, Jason Mitchell. I mean, there's a number of different companies out there. So this is just the top 100, what's gone up or down.
And frankly, this also highlights, and this is the difference between 2018 and looking at 2023. All right. So that's the difference. And that's what we're showing here. And this goes right to my earlier point about nothing staying the same. Organizations are constantly making tweaks and changes to their business offer, to their compensation structure, things like that. And that's really one of the overlying themes of today's call is the value that comes from really taking a deep dive, doing a competitive assessment on that annual basis.
One thing I want to mention, and it does say this in the Trends Report, is that some companies, and we're going to talk about when we talk about some of the models, are both, right? Like, so an LPT has a fee-based option and a capped option as well. So there might be a little bit of overlap. I know that there's some traditional brokerage companies that have also gone to like offering a cap model with less services or things like that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because sometimes you'll have the traditional name and you think, oh, that's definitely a traditional company, it's been around a long time, but their commission structure and commission plan is completely not that. It's the capped or it's fee-based or it's something else. All right. Looking at brokerage business models here. Again, we keep in these 4 categories. And what do we have here? Models by brokerage.
Over 5 years, the top 100.
All right. From 2017 to 2022. And we're looking at total sales volume among them. So capped models, look at that.
No,
This
it's
is
a
growth.
percent change. Yeah.
This is the growth.
Growth.
Mhm.
So traditional grew at 60%.
Yeah. Which actually, when we look at this is interesting in this, we don't have a slide on this, but I remember going in through the trends and diving into this. The average increase in the Mega 100, the top 100 in the Mega 1000 was around 68 or 70. It was more than traditional. So in other words, traditional didn't stay up with the increase that we're seeing here in these other models, models.
Yeah, look at business gen, right? 108% and fee-based 128. And then the capped model is 346%. And so again, a big portion of that is the EXP and the real and
yeah. And there's more, and we'll talk about that here. All right.
So we're going to touch on some of these companies. We just picked a few, and of course, EXP is not real. I mean, they're not new, right? 15 years, but we leave them on here because Real really came out to compete with them, and I think that Real is stealing some EXP agents, and so Real is growing. I want to guess 14, 15,000 agents now. And they're also, both EXP and Real are doing some brokerage roll-in programs, which are interesting, right? So we've had some clients that have decided that they no longer want to run a brokerage and they're going to roll under as sort of a teamerage under one of those companies. We'll talk about Side. I have another slide for Side. And the interesting thing about Side and when I talk with managers, they're like, oh, they're not in our market or they're not around here. And if you go on your state site and look at licensees, you'd be surprised because Side doesn't use the name Side, right? So we're going to share a slide that shows how many DBAs they have. They have over 300 DBAs in California alone. LPT is one of the newest, fastest growing players that we're seeing around. Again, similar to Real and EXP. Yeah. So it was founded by Robert Palmer, who had a mortgage company, and they started in Florida. I think that Robert posted that he had a net growth of 1,100 agents in January alone.
Of this year.
Yeah, of this year. Yeah. So I'm hearing that recruiting is challenging, right? From a lot of the brokerage owners that we're with here, but some of these companies are doing really well. The last time I talked to LPT, they were over 6,000 agents, and I think maybe in 20 states now. Yeah. So
fast growing.
Actually, yeah. And it was a client that brought them to our attention. And then you can talk about United and Fathom, and I'll mention Energy.
Yeah. So United, Fathom, these are names that aren't new either, talking about EXP, but a lot of growth. And actually United, Dan Duffy and his group have been doing a lot of acquisitions. That's been a part of that growth as well, but also, that model continues to attract, all models attract, depends on the talent and packaging of the whole thing. And then Fathom is also seeing success, rolling in teams into the Fathom network. And then we have Energy.
Yeah.
Energy Realty.
Before I touch on them, I want to mention United. So we have a client that's in the Southeast, and she is a recruiting machine. Yes, and she has a United franchise that just is growing like crazy. So it's been really fascinating to watch her. Yep. And Energy, so really interesting. If they're not on your radar, pay attention. They may be coming to a market near you soon. The founders of that are Aaron and Peter Noble, who came from EXP and Real ranks at C-level positions. And so they have developed a model kind of similar, a little different, not rev share. Anyway, really interesting model. So again, just a new player, right? So
yeah, one thing I want to highlight too in this slide, because we see fast growing companies, we're talking about agent count, things like that. We're seeing a lot of movement and growth in these areas. But one thing I want to make sure, and we discuss this briefly here for everybody, is no matter what lane you're in, whether you're traditional, you're a fee-based, whatever lane, one of the things these organizations have done extremely well, in my opinion, being Switzerland, being kind of agnostic, kind of outside and paying attention to what's happening here, is they've really packaged their value proposition very well. Yeah. And it really, they know who they are. They know what they're talking about as toward their value prop, and they're very succinct in that messaging.
And look, they're not for everybody. I mean, I recently had a friend that, looked at a number of these and landed at a more traditional brokerage, right? Yep. So they're not for everybody, but let's go to the next slide and then we'll talk a little bit.
There we go.
So this is just an interesting, from Side's website, some of their DBAs. And so again, I hear from clients or people saying, oh, they're not in my market. And, you know, they very well may be. So I think hopefully we'll have their numbers for the Mega 2000, but we had come across an article on a tech blog that they were doing about 16 billion in sales side. And so they're out there.
Yeah, and you said Mega 2000. You just gave
Mega.
Paul Hargy a heart attack. Yeah, it's right. The challenge of getting 1,000. But yeah.
Okay. So here's some common themes. And we picked this picture because the number one common theme is aspirational wealth that a lot of these companies are going toward, right? So they're very agent and team-centric brands. So they really help these agents build a brand within a brand. And I know some brokerages don't like that brokerage within a brokerage, but they've all embraced that in a big way. Aspirational wealth building, that's a huge part of what their focus is. And, you know, it's not just about selling real estate, it's about building wealth is another part of it.
Yeah, one thing I want to highlight on this point, and then you and I talked prior to going live here, is this aspirational wealth, every single model, every single brokerage out there can talk to this.
Yes.
You know, it is
find a way.
That's right. You all can support wealth building.
Yeah. I mean, they have high value MarTech. And I think, you know, that's something, obviously we have a technology consulting division that works with companies on this, but you know, they really are very focused on tech. I mean, I've heard that that they have like 100% engagement on their platform because they're required to use it. And I know building up engagement is important, right? So that's obviously a marketing focus. Highly accessible training and mentoring. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of traditional brokers that do just an awesome job at this, but maybe don't promote it well enough.
That's right.
You know, when I go to their social, I'm not seeing that they ran this, you know, great training. And, you know, one of the best recruiting opportunities right now is our events, like focused on training. And this is one of the things that some of these companies are doing are big events and inviting not just their agents, but other agents to their training events. Yeah. So that's something that everybody could think about doing as well. And the companies that are on here, with one exception, I think, side, because it's a little different, all have comp plan transparency. I mean, so you can literally go watch videos, go to their website, see exactly what their fees are. I mean, they put it out there. Another company, they mentioned Realty One Group, it's all over. This is our fees. So I think that that's something else, you know, find a way to do that, right? To be more transparent.
All right. So this moves us into the conducting the competitive assessment discussion. And we've touched on this through the process here. And one of the things, so let's talk about who would you target in a competitive assessment? Who would be the ones that you'd really want to conduct?
First about a client that we gave. Yeah. We do this, we do a program called T3 Fellows. That's an MBA for running a brokerage. Yeah. And this is the second module in this. Yeah. Which everyone does this exercise and then they present it to their peers in an offsite meeting that we do down in Austin, Texas. And it was interesting. We had a very dynamic leader who came from a cap model, started their own brokerage. They've gone from 18 agents to 200 agents in a year and a half or 2 years.
Just growing, great, real dynamic leader and leadership team now that's running this operation, really wants to go big. And we're talking about the Fellows program, this MBA style leadership program for people running brokerages or large teams. And he basically said, I got to the competitive assessment, talked about the competitive assessment piece, and he's like, oh, okay, you just took everything that sounds so awesome that what you guys do in the competitive assessment just kind of like brought me down. Like, okay, that's just
so basic.
So basic. You're so basic, Dean. Do you really think, you know, I want to pay for and go through a program and we're going to do a competitive assessment? It seems so basic. And it's actually interesting because one of the things he says after the fact of going through this process, it's one of the biggest aha moments came from him doing this exercise.
He was shocked at what he learned about what his competitors do. And in the end, he raised his cap because he determined that he was too cheap or right. So
he says, I'm worth so much more money compared to my competitors.
So we've done this for a number of different reasons. I mean, you might let's say that you want to institute a new transaction fee or something so you really need to know what's happening in your market. So really we recommend a deep dive. And in my previous life, when I've traveled around and visit companies, I remember I would pull out market share and reports, and they would be like, well, that company, they just have a kiosk at the airport. They're not. I said, well, guess what? They now have 250 agents in your marketplace. And they're like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So I think that really go deep. And you might think you know who your competitors are, but there's a lot of new players like LPT. Somebody recently said to me they had no idea that they had that many agents in their backyard, right? So really get focused on that and think about who this is. We provide this worksheet, and it's everything from you do your company, you do 4 of your top competitors. We recommend you present it, maybe have your managers all do this exercise and present it back. That's what we did with one very large company. They did it in all different markets, and all the managers presented back to the leaders what their findings were. And as part of it, it's what are your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for your company and threats, and what are that for your competitors, right? So it's
another great exercise. A part of that is then take these competitors, and the one point I was trying to make just a second ago, and here you're getting to see a little scrolling here, but think about who you've lost agents to. That would be people you want to look at. People, when you're interviewing agents who are coming to you and talking to you about joining your organization, who else are they meeting with? Those would be a short list of people that I would encourage you to look at. It doesn't have to be 4, it could be 3 to 5 to more. We've had some people do 9 and 10. If any one of those players is not your number one market penetration, number one market share company, I definitely do your number one market share company that's in your market, so you know exactly what their offer is, why they're so strong.
What are their fees? They have ancillary services. What are they really offering? And you could find it. I mean, in doing some work for clients, Dean and I have spent hours on YouTube, watching, and learning about all these different companies. So you can do the same, but it's great, just opportunity for you as a leader or to do for your managers.
Yeah, then through the SWOT analysis, think about then honing in what is your value proposition for your organization. And then when you look at each one of the competitors, what are the strengths that you have against them, and how can you accentuate those points? How can you amplify those messages? All right, so when you're what's great about this is also not only for recruiting, but retention. When someone comes to thinking about going here, you're so up to date with everything going on there. You can have that really. And what happens too is your confidence level. And this is one thing we actually talked briefly. I want to touch on this for just a quick second. A lot of these new models, they're coming across, and it feels like a lot of non-new models are kind of on their heels, feeling like, you know what, you're not the newest, shiniest penny anymore. And my point of when you do this exercise, what we saw, and I shared this story with one broker that had tremendous growth, is you raise your level of confidence and who you are and what you stand for and how you're unique and separate. Now, maybe you're not unique, you just do it better than other people in certain areas. And so that amplifies and it emits from you and your leadership team about who you are, what you stand for, and how you differentiate yourself from others.
This is who we are. That's great. That's not us. And this is who we are.
Exactly right.
If we're not a fit, then maybe you should make a move, right? Or stay here. So all
right.
So this is really it.
Just let's see if there's any chat or Q&A that we want to address. But with that, we want to throw out to you, if anybody has challenges, everybody has challenges, but if you want to talk to us, you think that would be of value to you, we're doing complimentary calls. And we'll love to hear about your organization, your current challenges. We'll share with you how we support organizations to help support and work through challenges and help them grow for the future. So if you have interest, go ahead and do that QR code. You'll go right to our calendar. Feel free to email us directly too. You can see that right there, Dean and Lisa. Okay. So there's a question about, will we also be discussing 100% commission models, each like Realty One Group, and how this business model compares to the fee-based capped and traditional that you're focusing on. We focused on all 4. So all 4 in that 100% commission model is going to be that flat fee-based model. So that's where the brokerage actually receive revenues so they can offset their expenses and make a profit. So that is part of one of those 4 categories. We dove in each one of those categories. So hopefully that was been addressed. That might have been an earlier question.
Now, one of the things too, when we work with clients, the first thing that we always do is this deep dive into their business. It's a discovery exercise. We call it an annual business review. And one of the things that's been coming out of that a little bit is sort of, well, maybe I need to adjust my model a little bit, or, maybe we had a client that honestly, they would be better off being a lead gen model, that model might be better for them than traditional based on their size and where they're at. So we really analyze that and look at different companies.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. And there's not, everyone's looking for that silver bullet that's going to solve, I just need that one thing that's going to be, and help me be done with this. And I guess a couple things on this is there's no silver bullet. There's multiple areas that improvement can be had which will increase your return on revenue, which is going to increase your profitability. And also it comes to the mindset, like everything's changing all the time. And I think that part of it adds a little anxiety. It's like, you know what, I'm constantly having to change. Can't I just stay in my lane and keep doing the same thing over and over? And the answer is no.
Right.
It's always to be aware of what's happening out there, always trying to improve your game. We talk about it being a destination. It's one that you'll never get to. You're always trying to improve. We talk about scales from 1 to 10. No one's ever a 10. All right. You're always trying to get to that. But also improvements can always be had in those areas. And I guess the final message I have for everybody is no matter what lane you're in, whether you're a new model, whether you're traditional, whether you're anything in between that we've discussed.
There's a place for you.
There is. There is. And there's agents out there
that want you.
Yeah, and the biggest X factor, guys, is the leaders, is the ones that are watching this. You are the X factor. We have seen leaders in markets in all these categories who own that market just because of the dynamic leadership, constantly pushing out to learn more, know more, be better themselves. And frankly, that's magnetic. People want to work with organizations and leaders like that. So I encourage you to keep pushing. And if we can be of help, go ahead and reach out to us. We look forward to talking to you. Thank you all. Take care.